Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome my listeners and viewers in the United States and all around the world. I am Vince Rocco, and it is Tuesday in New York City, so let's go behind the headlines and get the real story. But first, this is Talking New York Real Estate, the state of our industry. And up front today, as of September of this year, the New York City new condo development market has shown mixed performances. Manhattan's new development sales have been robust, maintaining a strong market share for 5 consecutive months above pre-pandemic levels despite high interest rates. In June, Manhattan accounted for over 60% of new development sales, indicating its strength even amid declining inventory. However, the luxury market did see a decline in activity by around 30% in June, and overall, Manhattan contract signings dropped by 5% compared to a year ago. Certain areas such as Midtown and Lenox Hill saw strong sales, with popular buildings like 520 Fifth Avenue and the Treadwell building reporting several new contracts. In contrast, the market took a dip, though, in September, with new condo contracts falling below pre-pandemic levels across Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens. This decline was partly attributed to high mortgage rates and a lack of new inventory being introduced. Developers have been motivated to sell, but supply has remained increasingly low, with fewer new buildings launching and buyers adjusting to the higher mortgage rate landscape. And despite this, the luxury submarket, particularly units priced above $4 million, outperformed the pre-pandemic average, though it was the slowest month for this segment in a year. And developers in New York City's condo market are facing challenges with financing and inventory shortages. Despite the growth in condo sales, high mortgage rates have made financing more difficult, prompting developers to seek alternative funding sources or offer incentives to attract more buyers. Additionally, with the Fed Reserve's tight monetary policy, access to capital has become more restricted, impacting the ability to start new projects. And we have several new development experts here at the table with us this morning to break it all down. We will discuss, and we will have all that and so much more as Talking New York Real Estate gets underway on this Tuesday morning. And in the news this morning, in local politics news, Mayor Adams put on a brave face as he entered Manhattan federal court last week for his arraignment on historic corruption charges. During his arraignment, Adams is expected to plead not guilty, and he did plead not guilty to a 5-count indictment unsealed that includes charges of conspiracy, bribery, soliciting illegal foreign campaign donations, and wire fraud. The mayor is accused of soliciting and accepting illegal foreign campaign donations and undisclosed gifts from a Turkish official and businessman for over a decade. This in exchange for using his position as Brooklyn Borough President to speed up fire safety approvals for the country's new Midtown consulate high-rise in 2021. Federal prosecutors further allege that Adams actively covered up his illegal activity by destroying paper trails and using straw donors to bring the illicit foreign donations into his campaign coffers. He then allegedly used those donations to attain $10 million in public funds for his 2021 mayoral campaign from the city's generous matching funds program, which offers an 8-to-1 match. Of course, for his part, the mayor insists he is entirely innocent, all this is fraud, and that the case is based on lies. More on that as it comes in. And the rental broker fee bill is making headlines once again. A bill that requires whoever hires a real estate agent to rent their apartment is to pay for their services is moving forward again in the New York City Council, months after fiery hearings where hundreds of brokers testified against the proposed legislation. Reigns reported that the bill was on the agenda of a meeting of the City Council's Democratic Conference, an indication that it could pass this year. The bill also includes new protections for tenants. The updated version would require an apartment listing to describe the fees and commissions the tenant is expected to pay and would allow the city to enforce civil penalties against anyone who misrepresents those fees. As it stands, the bill has 33 voting sponsors and is 1 vote shy of a veto-proof majority. But it's yet unclear if City Council Speaker Adrian Adams will bring it to a vote, which would be required for the bill to become law. And a representative for Chayasi, the city's council member who authorized the bill, did not immediately respond to a request for comment. In economic news, the personal consumption Expenditures Price Index, aka PCE, rose 0.1% last month and was 2.2% higher than a year ago. The annual rate of inflation was below the Dow Jones forecast of 2.3% and the lowest reading since February of 2021. So far, so good. But what about core inflation? The takeaway here is that inflation continues to edge closer to the Fed's 2% target, and Friday's report increases the already high probability of 2 more 25 basis points cuts this year. And from the desk of Marketproof, which monitors all new developments in New York City and all boroughs, research shows that over the past 12 months, Manhattan has reported a weekly average of 28 new development deals, with Brooklyn and Queens reporting a combined 24. But this week, Manhattan charged ahead and grew its lead from 4 deals to 18, and that's been the story throughout September. And finally, in entertainment news, Hoda Kotb, whose presence has greeted groggy-eyed viewers of NBC's Today Show for the past 17 years, said last week that she would step down as host from the show and her duties early next year. So sad, in my opinion. Her surprise decision came after a period of reflection prompted by her recent 60th birthday. She says, I just thought the universe was speaking to me. And in an interview with the New York Times before she broke the news on air to the viewers, this is a time in my life for looking inside and figuring out what your yearnings are and what your callings were, or where your direction is headed during this new decade. A one-time local news reporter, Hoda, used an easy intimacy with viewers, not to mention a habit of sipping wine on air, to transform herself into one of the most famous faces of an entire network, which she joined in 1988 as a Deadline correspondent. Hoda will remain at NBC doing occasional pieces throughout the network. And by the way, if anyone cares, I'm very available to step right in. Call me. And with me at the table today are Louise, Phillips, Forbes, and Brown Harris Stevens, John Harrison from Core Real Estate, and Kael Goodman, CEO and co-founder of Marketproof.
Hey, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. As an official moving partner of Brown Harris Stevens, we know that your clients deserve more than just a move. At Roadway Moving and Storage, we turn moving into an experience they will love. From specialized services to a white glove treatment, we've got it all covered. When you choose Roadway, you're choosing a peace of mind for your clients. Plus, our referral program is the most rewarding in the industry. Want to learn more? Shoot me an email at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
To start, as I said at the top of the show, in September of this year, new contracts for new condominiums in all boroughs fell below pre-pandemic levels. So, the new condo market has been up, it's been down, it's been up, it's been down. For the most part, it's been fairly robust. And we've seen, throughout the last year and a half, that a lot more cash deals have been happening, but at very higher levels than, normal. But things seem to be changing just a bit with the recent cut in interest rates from the Fed last week. So we're waiting to see just how much more activity increases. But, Kael, let me start with you. Sure. How is the sales volume for new condos?
How are we doing?
How are we doing, as of today? I mean, we're climbing, I think, but where?
I mean, I think we're basically on par with where we were pre-pandemic. I mean, everything continues just to be an adjustment from the kind of heights that we were at, right? Coming out with all the cheap money. And now we're just kind of back to where we were 2018, 2019. And we bump up and down. But generally, I think we're okay. We can look at the differences between Manhattan and Brooklyn and Queens, and there's some fluctuation in different neighborhoods where maybe there isn't the kind of inventory that people might want,
right?
But on the demand side, it's pretty much where we were, and I think that's really the headline.
Louise, let me ask you, because both of you, are representing two wonderful buildings here in town in two different neighborhoods. But what are you seeing as far as volume over the last year and a half? And we'll get to the interest rate portion later, but higher end apartments, what are you seeing as, typical volume these days? Has it increased over the last year and a half, or not?
I mean, I had a really incredibly strong first quarter, which was not what I understand from everybody. And
right.
I don't know why that is, but I have focused on messaging what a buyer's market it was all all this past year.
Correct.
And the shift is interesting that it's shifted. There's still a lot of cash, 67% of my transactions, but the new developments, I mean, we have, I think,
68%, you're right.
and 68 for me personally on my transactions, but July and August represented, I must have done 15 deals, two weeks of appointments with buyer tours after the interest rate dropped and right before it, the week before and the week of. We did 26 buyer tours. There were 117 appointments. It's not even counting my exclusives. These are buyer tours, and we did 6 transactions.
Yeah.
So they are off the sidelines, and they want to, and if you trace interest and you take a look at what your interest income is compared to what your interest rate is at 2.8 and what it is now, it's a wash. So there's no reason not to be not owning or paying somebody else's mortgage.
John, in the building that you represent, obviously also robust sales, almost complete.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What are you seeing in the last, year and a half, or how has it changed in the last, couple of months?
Yeah, well, so I love what Louise sharing in terms of the traffic. I think that to really understand what's happening in our market, we have to look at both the data, and Kael is I reference him all the time as sort of the oracle of
genius
data. Yes, genius. And boots on the ground, because let's face it, when we're making sense of all these numbers, we are always doing it retrospectively. It's like, okay, I noticed this thing happened. There was an uptick in this or a decrease in interest rates, and I noticed a bunch of people that came in over the weekend. Therefore, this must be the pattern that's taking place.
Absolutely.
And it's hard for consumers to always understand all of the things that go into that. This year is an election year. And the majority, I think it's out of 9 of the last 11 election cycles, prices have typically gone up after the election. Mortgages in 8 of the last 9 election cycles have decreased going up to election. Prices, number of home sales have increased in 8 out of the last 9 elections right after the election, which shows people are transacting. But from 1963 through 2019, the vast majority of seasonal decreases has been much greater, meaning people are afraid to move forward. So if we take that general fear that people have in moving forward and purchasing during an election year, but then we layer that on with some of the fluctuation in interest rates, the fact that we are back to a kind of pre-pandemic normal is, I'd say, a healthy sign.
Absolutely.
We also saw a lot of increase towards the beginning of the year, and then going into the summertime.
I was in a bidding war with you.
Yes, I know. Well, I did a deal with Louise where
bidding wars are great. Please bring them back again. Come on.
And another top agent were fighting for their clients over the same unit.
I won.
But seasonal,
of course you did.
Seasonal drops over the summer, I think, are typical. We saw at one of my projects, Eastlight, we saw a really big uptick as soon as Labor Day passed, massive uptick.
Interesting, and I had just the opposite. Well, we still have strong post-Labor Day, but our July and August, I think we did 7 transactions of our 4 bedrooms. 7.
Yeah.
And subsequently, since Labor Day, we've done 4. We have 2 left.
Well, we had a couple of...
That's amazing, because you're talking high-ticket item
large
units.
6.
Yeah.
Large units.
$6 million.
Right.
Well,
All
at
hovering at
Resale,
6.
we've now sold through everything except for 2 units that we have. These are our 3-bedroom apartments, and one of them has a tentative deal in place. So Rose Hill, the price point's a little bit higher. So it's interesting to see how price point might affect some of those numbers too.
So when it comes to all cash deals versus financing deals in the new development space, okay, we'll get to resale in a bit, but in the new development space, do you find that most people come to the new development buildings with all cash in mind because the prices are much higher than it would be in resale? Or do they come, with, well, I might finance, I may not finance, I don't know, what about this or what about that?
You go first.
We did a big study with the New York Times, and what we saw was that people can, in the new development space, they can either pay cash or finance if they want to.
Right.
And as a result, when the mortgage rates started to tick up, people just traded for cash. They just bought for cash, and the numbers reached into the 70s, 70. I don't remember exactly, 73 or 70.
Like 72.
70%. Somewhere in the
Percent
Yeah.
of
all
cash. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now,
I saw that spike.
And now what you see, and where did the cash come from? This was the interesting research that the Times reporters did, is they looked at where people got that cash from.
Interesting.
And
Family.
high-paying jobs, trading portfolios. There were a lot of different places, right? Young kids who were coming for colleges, right? So there were a lot of different places that people were getting the cash. And then now we'll see is as the rates start to tick down, people go, well, maybe I'll get financing instead.
Well, what's interesting is
also,
if they're paying with cash, why are they paying with cash? Because they have the capacity so that they're not relying on interest rates.
Yes.
But I feel like it ties to the sentiment. If they feel like, ooh, this is finally a good time, I don't think the prices are going to drop much more. And I think that more people may eventually enter the purchase pool. Therefore, I'm going to execute a cash deal.
Yeah, but I actually am seeing very conscious cash transactions because of the tax opportunity of pulling their money out
of other
and putting it
vehicles.
into where 100% of your interest is deductible. I mean, the closing costs are deductible, and it's interesting for real property. It's a big play.
What I find really interesting in the all cash scenario is, you know, as everybody has complained in the last couple of years about the economy, but spending is up and cash is available. And especially when you talk about New York City, there's always been a lot of cash.
So, I mean, that's really the
So
key.
that's where it comes from, right?
Look, if you look at the average price point in New York City versus the U.S., I mean, we really need to forget about the U.S. numbers.
Right.
Because the price point is, 4X the U.S. number?
A very segmented market.
And I say that to people when they want to make that comparison, and you're so right, Kael, because
and the all
it's
cash is
different.
2X, right? Like all cash across the U.S. is like 35%.
Right.
So it's really very different.
And listen, all cash, if you want to refinance at some point down the road, if money becomes more valuable, you can always do that and take back some of your money, right?
Which many will do.
And I would also just mention that you were just talking about the condo market. So this past week, of the 18 condos, the 18 contracts that were above $4 million, 12 of those were condos. All over the city, there were only 2 townhouses.
Yeah.
I think, and two co-ops. So I find that to be also an interesting statistic.
That's a very interesting stat, because when you look at those numbers, 4 million, 5 million and up, immediately people go to, well, that must be a townhouse, or that must be, a building of some sort.
No, a lot
it
of
isn't.
Condos.
A lot of condos these days.
well,
the high 4 bedrooms, as Louise said before.
Right.
4 bedrooms, you're in that $5-6 million range.
Certain developers have gotten really smart about making their product competitive with townhouses, right?
Yeah.
Especially in Manhattan uptown.
According to Marketproof, Kael's report here, 266. This is market-wide, okay? 266 contracts signed last week. Average price per square foot, $1,355. Average price per unit, $1.73 million. And average day on the market, 105 days. Which, by the way, is down now. But it's down, but it's not as bad as a lot of people want to make it. 266 contracts citywide. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Where are they mostly coming from? Midtown?
Oh, God, you got to memorize this.
Or you mean
what buildings? Where are the locations? Excuse me. Yeah.
I think half of that is Manhattan, then the other half would be Brooklyn and Queens.
Brooklyn and Queens, and Queens has seen 11% year-over-year growth, and also Brooklyn is still climbing.
Well,
Queens has been growing for a while. Queens
has been growing.
Long Island City, but even Astoria, some of the various micro developments.
It's just going to start having that Brooklyn effect, where everything further away is going to start to become the new anchor.
The problem is inventory. We'll talk about that in a minute after the break. We got to take a quick break. We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere. This is Talking New York Real Estate on the More Network. We will be right back.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
Okay, we are back. I want to talk a little bit about the price point that defines the super high-end luxury. Now, I've been saying for years on this program, most people measure it by 4 million and above. I kind of take that and say maybe 5 or 6 million and above. What is really the right number of the super high-end luxury, whether it's all cash or finance? What is that right number? Because people ask me all the time. And, when you look at market reports, everybody quotes 4 million and up, and that's
the
okay.
top
It's
10%.
really 10.
It's the top 10% of the market is considered luxury. So whatever that 10% represents is luxury. That's the definition.
Price point, though, right?
Price point,
Price point, yeah.
And so 4 million has been the benchmark. it could. I mean, you have the ultra luxury, which is going to be 8 to 10 million.
Well, that's
plus.
yeah.
Then you have like the $4 million massive townhouse is not going to be luxury, but maybe the $2 million studio would be super high end luxury. So this is where
$2 million studio.
So
Where
yeah,
have we
so
gone?
perspective.
we sold some studios for around a little under $2 million
In your building?
Yeah, I mean, we had some studios that were the 1.6, 1.7
Mazel tov,
range.
dude. Really?
But they're really, really nice.
Okay.
I mean, that's why it's hard. But you can't slice up the numbers that way. You've got to come up with some
formula.
formula to kind of understand.
Well-
Generally speaking, it's price. It's price point, because who can afford certain prices?
Earlier this year, we saw an off-market townhouse transaction happen at $79 million in the Village, which
Yes.
is, when you see that, there's an energy in the market that is going to continue to be dictated by the wealth who can,
Right.
and that we are creating our inventory. I mean, there was a $60 million in September, a $60 million co-op that transacted. So I mean, luxury and ultra luxury are defined by many steps, in my opinion.
Now that you mentioned townhouses, I was going to ask that later, but that number is staggering, okay, $79 million. Post-COVID, everybody wanted a house because it was more private, and should we get back into a pandemic situation again and lockdown, at least they had the roof, they had a backyard, they can go outside and breathe and be in their own space. We're comfortably past that thought, but yet townhouses,
second homes.
Well,
The second home market sort of makes up for that. I
but
think people got
townhouses are
lonely.
still selling though for very big prices,
And not to mention,
why?
All of those transactions that took place during the pandemic, whether it was in Brooklyn or in the Village, they were people that took assets that had not been on the market, bought them quietly in 20 and 21, and they're back on the market now with $7 and $8 million worth of renovations in them, and they've gone from a four unit home that sold for $7 million on West 12th Street, and it was on the market for $21 million.
Right.
So
Right.
that is an
Significant.
efficiency to the market, and also it's answering a calling to the market.
It's incredible. And as you said, John, the second home marketplace has also expanded. My family lives up in Westchester, and I have to tell you something. We have been looking at our market here in New York City for the past year and a half, 2 years. Kind of weird, kind of, questionable, up, down, whatever, flat. Up in Westchester, post-pandemic, it has not stopped. It's booming.
And there's no product.
And there is
Westchester
no
would be
product.
Interesting, because it's just far enough. For
And I say
people to
this every
go
week.
as a second home, but it's also close enough that people could
Right.
commute. And so you have two different pools of buyers. And some other places like Hudson, Poconos, Catskills, all of these places really took off over pandemic because those were great second home places where you could get to the city within a couple of hours, or maybe a little bit more if you're further upstate.
Yeah, when I visit the family up in Westchester and I come back on a Monday morning, the train, Metro North, is stacked.
Yeah,
Stacked.
totally. And
Standing room only. It's
Look-
like, wow, I can't get over it.
Monday through Thursday.
Monday through Thursday, right?
Exactly.
But I just launched a partnership in Connecticut
Yes, you did.
myself, and looking at those numbers and I was just kind of studying what happened 10 years ago on inventory and where we are today. Like, there's 17 homes on the market in all of Darien compared to 117 this exact time.
Yeah.
Wow.
10 years
years
ago.
ago.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's an inventory problem. Westchester, Connecticut, probably out on Long Island.
It's national, and it's going to happen here as well because they can't build
Overall,
them fast enough.
that's true.
Well, they can't build them fast enough. We're going to get to developers in a second also, because I want your expert opinion on what that is. But talking about the new condo, explosion, according to the numbers, right? Midtown, they say, Midtown and Lenox Hill have shown the strongest activity, with buildings like 520 Fifth Avenue and the Treadwell buildings. Why are those two buildings in particular selling so well? And you're in Midtown also, so you're selling well at
Take a
Rose
first
Hill.
crack at it.
Yeah, so I think that it's people that are looking to own in the city. There's something about central proximity, ease of access in and out of the city, maybe proximity to Grand Central, proximity to all of the restaurants. I mean, with Rose Hill, we're in the heart of Nomad. We were watching all of these beautiful restaurants open up all around us. We're not far from the Ritz-Carlton and the restaurants associated with that. The Ned took over in the old Nomad Hotel, which offers a social club and a lot of amenities there. So I think people realized, wait, I could have luxury, and maybe they don't need as much space. They'd rather concentrate some of that money towards more luxurious square foot versus more square feet for less, and have close proximity. And then proximity is power in a way, power to live freely, to be able to walk where you want to go. Yeah. You can just kind of drop yourself in the middle. So I think that's where Midtown is sort of seeing this transformation. Also, I think
central, not far east or west.
No, right.
Central,
if you're too far
exactly.
east or west, then you've got to commute, or you feel segmented.
Right.
Like Hudson Yards. I remember people coming to us from Hudson Yards.
That's like the jungle. I mean, the desert over there. It's so far away.
It was tough because people felt that life sort of disappeared. It became a bit of a ghost town over the pandemic. And people realized, like, oh, now there's a lot of great things happening in Hudson Yards.
Oh, it's beautiful.
But this is all fed into, I think, why some people are really focusing on getting something that's central.
Let me add a little bit to that. I mean, that's
Please do.
Great. I love what you said. And then there's another level to that, I think, which is good product, the right mix, the right sizes.
Yeah.
The stuff at 525th is smaller units primarily that are priced correctly.
In Midtown, that makes sense.
With a product that people want to live in.
Yes.
So you get all those pieces right, then you got a product that sells well. You get any one of those wrong,
you're right.
You're discounting price.
Absolutely.
You're too far west.
Absolutely.
Right? There's some product at far west side. They got to lower the prices, then they start to move.
Yeah.
Isn't that indicative of what went on at Hudson Yards? I mean, they slowed down significantly for the longest time. Now, all of a sudden, it's picking up. I would assume they've lowered prices significantly to reinvigorate traffic.
And at some point, more community will be formed to where it won't be so new and isolated.
And you have to remember that that's 1.7 million square feet. And all encompassing that. And so that's a lot of absorption.
It's a lot.
You know, my developer at 393 is the developer of 520 Fifth Avenue, which is a wickedly smart team. And, you know, one of the things that I find so fascinating about their process, they're very methodical, but the fact that what they built is part of it is office, part of it is a private luxury club, membership only, and then they have this boutique top of the echelon where, you know, they did 54 transactions in less than 4 months.
Yeah. Amazing.
I mean, that's hitting a market and understanding it compared
to showing that there is an appetite and a desire. We just have to figure out what is the specific appetite.
International, domestic, and empty nesters.
Yeah. Any comment on the Treadwell?
Treadwell, I think, is, you know, it hit a niche of the market that attracted international. The smaller, they're having more difficulty in the bigger apartments. So what we've come to learn is that those 3 bedrooms in that location or that 4 bedrooms really need to be efficient.
Yeah.
And that when they get bigger, they need to, in my opinion, the rooms need to have bigger scale to them.
Absolutely.
It is the number one selling building in that neighborhood, however.
No, it is. And that's why I jotted it down here, because it is. And with 520, as Louise said, both of those buildings, and I think it's attracting a larger audience than ever to that Midtown area. I mean, again, as long as it's central, you're going to have good play. But, you know, people want convenience today. They want to be able to walk to work. They want to be able to, if they need to jump on a train, it's got to be right there close by and get to where they're going, or car service, whatever it is. I was a little amazed at those 2 buildings being the number one selling buildings in that area. I was really amazed.
And to kind of this larger point, what we're seeing downtown, like way downtown Wall Street, FiDi, this is a rental market. And so you have thousands of rentals that are going to be coming on the market the next few years.
Yep.
I still don't understand downtown FiDi area. I mean, no offense, I just don't understand.
To a degree, only because that was the first place that we
lived
when we moved here, and it has turned into a more lively neighborhood, even
youthful.
Since we.
It has, right?
But
I worked down there. It was
so known
nothing.
Right, you worked down there. I mean, that's just it. Is that it feels hard to separate that from the idea of the work that takes place.
Right. The buildings I worked in are now condominiums. I can't even get over it, or rental buildings.
But some people don't want to feel like they're stuck in their work.
Right.
You know, that's why I think not everybody that works down there actually wants to live down there.
Yep.
And there are a lot of rentals. That makes a lot of sense because people that are moving to the city, let's look at this, 2/3 of our population rent, whereas in most places 2/3 own. So we have a high transient nature of people that are moving to the city to start their jobs. A lot of jobs in the finance
many of these
sector.
developers are going to
100%.
have a play where that's going to convert to a condominium at a later date.
Well, do you remember the Gary building, New York Gary building? It was like that was originally going to be a condo. and the 900 units. And I remember hearing that it was underwritten. Most buildings are underwritten for those that are listing as both condo and rental, so that the developer can flip it if they decide to. But that would have been really tough had they brought those 900 units onto the market at the same time.
900 units. I can only imagine how many years that would be to sell
and I know
those.
people that live there, and I've placed, and people love living there, but that's a lot to absorb at once.
Yeah.
In all neighborhoods, we've talked about it, and I mentioned it at the top of the show, inventory remains a concern. There are about 5,000 unsold units, new condos in Manhattan, about 47% of months of selling. Okay, how do we get that better? Is it price reductions? Is it better advertising? Is it going to be helped because of the interest rate
reductions? When you say
reductions?
better, you mean
How are we going to get those unsold units sold faster?
I think it's just going to happen naturally. I mean, just let the clock.
That's a
keep
lot of
ticking.
units in Manhattan alone.
Well, but not all of those
agree with
units are
that.
available to move into right now.
it's
Okay.
I don't think so.
This is the thing on the demand side. It's pretty constant in Manhattan.
Always.
Every year, it's roughly, regardless of how much inventory there is, it's the amount of demand, the number of buyers is pretty stable.
Yeah.
But it says, though, approximately 47 months of sales at the current pace.
Yeah.
Where at the pace at the moment right now. That's dragging, I think, to get those 5,000 cut in half
But
even.
It's the issue is where they are, right? In some places,
Absolutely.
there's shortage. Take the West Village, right? There's 2 buildings there.
Well, the West Village, yeah.
There's just nothing there. In other neighborhoods, there's more. So it's really getting getting product,
The right formula at
in
the
the
right
right
location.
places.
But does that number also take into account any
Yes.
shadow inventory or unbuilt?
Right,
or
it does,
unfinished?
and it takes in.
So-
I mean, if you take out of that, Vince, a few large buildings where absorption is going to take a while, the
Right.
number's a little lower. That's probably 1,000 of those units.
And I would just also say, as you're talking about this inventory, the Henry is opened quietly, now officially launched, has done 30% sales
Right.
at what are those price per square foot blended?
3,000 something.
A little bit lower than that.
Yeah.
And 140 Jane Street, contract signed at $23 million. It's 2 years out to be built. But that's a location-driven inventory that's not going to...
And that in itself is interesting. $23 million, and you're not going to be able to move into it for 2 years,
Right.
potentially. So, you're driving a stake in the ground
it's in
saying,
Some
I want
markets,
that unit.
That's the default for some markets. Like if you buy in Miami, a lot of times you are putting money into something that you won't see until it's completed.
Yeah.
You
Right.
make deposits or spend all of your money
if you
and
take
not see it.
64 University, how many units was that? Anybody remember? Relatively small in the West Village. Not a single listing came on the market, right? So
Same with 540 Hudson, yeah.
There are locations where that's going to happen. These are very, popular areas, niche markets, if you want to label it as that.
What happened
People
to the
look-
idea of pocket listings there? I don't know how that went, but
There you go.
In
Pocket-
general,
That's
or
Frederick, you
there
know, so-
specifically?
it just
yeah.
that team.
It's a Miami style of selling. Just,
Yeah.
you push it out to your network, never make it publicly available.
But we all, talk about the lack of inventory out there that we can show our buyers, even on the resale side, not even in the new condo. But yet we have this backlog of unsold new units. And so it kind of contradicts each other, right?
Well,
Everybody
welcome to
says,
Marketproof.
where is... No, I know that. But people say, well, where is the inventory? But yet it is there. So how
There's
come
a
I'm not
ton
finding it?
in the Bronx? There's a ton in the Bronx. There's what's happening in Queens. Look at Naftali's project.
No, Naftali sells very well, though, for the most
in
part.
Brooklyn. I mean, that's his first forage into
Brooklyn,
that
yeah.
hood. It'll be
Absolutely.
interesting to see how that.
But also to compare to the timeline, the general timeline that it takes to go through and absorb even a single unit is not just like, hey, it's on the market today and it's sold tomorrow. I mean, most of the time from contract to closing, it can be a good couple of months.
Oh, absolutely.
So you stack that on top of the fact that you have unfinished units or units that aren't even TCO'd yet
Yeah.
in some circumstances.
Yeah.
They're available to talk about, but they're not done.
Right.
Some of them that haven't even been built yet. And then all of a sudden, the numbers don't stand alone as having importance. I think it has to be in the context of what numbers have looked like in the past or in the future. Like the number of 5,000, if I have $5,000 left to my name in my bank account, that's not a lot. If I have 5,000, days off where I don't have to work, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
It's all in
Right.
context. So
Oh,
you've got to
absolutely.
look at the general trading traffic and momentum to see what that means.
There's a new vertical for Marketproof, which is shadow inventory, location. Like you're gonna have to
We'll get
Break
on.
it down.
Right,
It's
we'll
great.
get on.
No,
dice and slice
to
it.
look at all of these different slices.
You know, like y'all, I spent, most of my career selling new development buildings, okay? And it's been a year and a half since
Say
I've...
y'all for us Southerners.
I did. Well, my girlfriend over here.
I'm from
But
Texas.
I know you are. But I haven't been on a project in a year and a half. And I just remember the days where, selling new condo stuff was so robust and people flocking in the door and 25 people sitting in the waiting room just to buy off of floor plans. I mean, it was unbelievable. And through the years, I've seen, the ups and downs of whatever, inventory, low, inventory high, whatever. What hasn't changed, I think, is the absolute, and you guys tell me better, the absolute want and need for new development. A lot of people still are out there on the buy side wanting brand new.
I see.
Absolutely.
Regardless of what the inventory is, regardless of what the price point is, I think why it always ends up selling well is because people want brand new. I want to be the first person living there. Are you seeing that
Absolutely.
in your building more?
Yes. I mean, whenever I tour somebody, I always like to get some sense of their context.
Yeah.
I'll ask usually
Right.
like, great, so do you live nearby? I mean, do you live in the neighborhood? So I can understand what to explain about the neighborhood and the building. And then at some point I might ask, are you just shopping for new development or are you focused on certain area? And more often than not, they say, I'm only looking at new development. And it's for a number of reasons. There is a little bit, there's a lower barrier of entry on the one hand. There's a higher barrier of entry on the one hand because buying a new development is very different from buying in resale. And as an agent, you must understand that because it's very different. And guiding your buyer is so important because it does operate so differently. But on the other hand, barrier of entry is lower because there's no board package. There's no interview.
There are the pluses and minuses to buying in
It's
resale.
a little bit easier to buy a little bit more anonymously.
Yep.
We have a very international city. We have people that are coming in from a number of different places. But the idea of just being able to buy and not have the hassle of going through everything that you might in a resale.
When I said earlier in the program today, where people, this is a town where people have a lot of money. When you're buying new development condos, and you all know this as well, the closing costs are exorbitantly high, right? Unless you can negotiate and get them back to the seller, who's the developer. Sometimes that works, sometimes not. In the old days, buyer paid for everything, right? It's timing of the market. So when somebody comes
still
out,
exists regardless of who pays them.
No, they
those
still
costs exist.
Right. And so if you're signing up to buy a new development building, apartment in a building, you're signing up not only to pay $3 and $4 million for the unit, but hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially.
4%.
2 points, yeah.
4% in closing
good
costs,
average.
right?
More. I mean, if it's a higher price point.
More if it's a higher price point.
You're not even counting
everything,
mansion.
transfer, mansion.
Correct. And again, you can either have that negotiated back to the developer in some cases, but if it's a hot selling place, it's not going to work that way. Right. All right, we're going to talk about those developers when we come back on the other side of this break. Don't go anywhere. This is Talking New York Real Estate on the More Network.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business. And it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
Okay, we are back. So I want to talk a little bit about the developers, and you two here, and even Kael, who are working with developers at the moment. They're struggling to meet the demands of construction cost because they remain high, securing financing for new developments, which is a little more difficult these days, most especially because of the interest rate increases, over the last couple of years. Challenges just in general over the economic conditions of our country, of our city, whatever. Upward pressures on prices, right? What are your developers saying right now to you as, head of sales and your team? What is their vision for the future? Are they more optimistic as we go through, this year and things seem to be getting better economically and interest rate wise?
Talking about future projects?
Correct. Well, no. Current project finishing and then future.
I mean, I can speak for my team at Rubina they are bullish, and they have mastered their formula, whether it's going to be in Portland, Oregon, and it's 1 million square feet, or if it's a tower that's 500,000 square feet in the middle of Manhattan. I mean, they have bid that with they're doing construction 3 shifts a day, so it's 24/7. So they are 5 months ahead of schedule. I've not experienced that success level. So when you have it down to a science, this is when you are on the hunt, and sites want to do deals with those developers. So I will say that there are things that I am cautious about, because what's happening 2 years from now, there's so much that can happen. And so thinking about a commercial site and looking at what the taxes are going to set at and be at a baseline, that monthly cost is going to affect what people will pay ultimately.
Oh, 100%. And let me ask you a quick question about, some of our developers are self-financed, right? And some are financing or trying to finance. Do you see any kind of...
I have 2 clients. My largest client is, I've done $2.5 billion worth of business with on a handshake, and they never have debt. So they are able to weather storms. Like, I opened up a building with them the day that Lehman collapsed, and they ended up holding paper.
I closed a building the day Lehman collapsed. I know that.
But they ended up holding paper for 7 years for all those people, because they could, because financing wasn't a choice. Right. So listen, that's where cash is king again. Mm-hmm. And the debt ratio, and helping sponsors and developers analyze the cost, the time value of money. If you're not a seasoned developer, you can really get caught.
Yeah, when you talk about, supply chain issues and the cost of construction across the board increasing, right? You have to think that the developers are struggling just like a seller is, a buyer is.
I mean, I
anybody
remember
else
coming out of the pandemic, brokers would call me about some of our listings at Rose Hill and ask, like, hey, listen, hopefully you guys are offering some good discounts because hard times.
You're like, no.
And I'm having these conversations like, no, actually, we're not discounting anything. If anything, we should increase, because let me tell you about how much it has cost our developer, Rockefeller Group, more because now they have fewer people on the job site, because of various pandemic regulations, not as many people working. The supply chain shortages absolutely caused an increase in raw material, various materials, even some things that are sort of prepaid. The costs go up. Even acquiring space, like, it is much more expensive even today to build a new building than it would have been several years ago. So it is more expensive. It is more difficult. We're also talking about a finite amount of space if we're focused on Manhattan. So where do you get the property from? There are conversations about repurposing and rebranding and renovating, reconstructing office buildings, but that's not a simple fix, because
it's also not
efficient. The core doesn't fit.
Like
100%. You don't have windows. You've got a
special kind of expertise to do something like that.
Yeah, so it can.
But yet it remains on the mind of a lot of developers who think they can do it.
Well, and listen, I applaud developers and any human that says, don't tell me something can't be done. I'll come up with 50 creative ways.
Absolutely.
It's just that there's always a cost to that.
Of course there is.
Whatever it is, there's going to be some type of cost.
Right. But the drive to want to do that remains, I think.
Love listen, look at the city we're living in.
Right.
We're living in an amazing city with beautiful buildings. It's
creativity.
astounding. It is a miracle. Once upon a time, people were building, little carving holes in caves, and that was home. So we're already doing.
Maybe
the
we need to go
impossible.
back to the little holes in the caves.
Sometimes, But we're already doing the impossible. So it's not about saying we can or can't do something. It's just understanding that there's a cost to it. And sometimes
absolutely.
people lose sight of the fact that that affects everybody, including
let me jump in. I mean, as New Yorkers, we tend to focus a lot on ourselves here. Maybe everybody does in every city.
Who, me?
Yeah, right.
No.
Right. But the capital coming out of the pandemic is flowing much more broadly across many cities. Mm-hmm. Many developers, investors that just invested in New York are now looking at a lot of other markets. It's not only Florida and Texas, but a lot of secondary cities. Mm-hmm. People, I think, to the earlier point, are more disciplined in their thinking. You got to buy the land for X. Construction's going to cost Y. We have to be able to sell for this much.
That's right.
If we can't reach those hurdles, we'll move on to another project.
I've had a number of conversations with my developers about have called and said, "Hey, John, we're sort of thinking about a project here, but what do you think we could sell if we build?" And we have these conversations, and I've heard them say, "Yeah, I don't think this is going to make sense."
Right.
Because
Yeah.
of acquisition,
Right.
building,
Absolutely.
and then sell. If you can't do it on paper, then you certainly shouldn't do it on the ground.
Yep.
Before we get into the market in general and where we are today, just to kind of close out the new development piece, in Kael, what are your projections? I mean, you follow this data, you absorb this data, day after day after day. You see all the different numbers and transactions in different locations, boroughs, whatever. Where do you see us going from now to the end of the year in new developments, and then into 2025 as we continue this push to get that new development product out there, people out there who only want to buy brand new, to get them to come and visit, and then of course to purchase? Where do you see us going between now and the end of the year in new condo development?
So on
In all boroughs.
the number of units that are purchased and the number of units that are built are relatively the same right now. Yeah. It ticks up, it ticks down.
Right.
So it's pretty efficient. To my point back in the beginning, it's pretty stable.
Yep.
And just remember, in Manhattan, new housing grows at less than 0.5% per year. Right. It's very, very slow growth. Right. And I've said this on your show before.
I didn't remember that number. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you know the rate for new household growth? Not new population, because population, every time a person's born, they don't get their own house. But I would think
Total
that
households?
Total households probably increases at a faster rate than new households.
Probably.
built.
But again, I mean, if you just take the percentage of housing units that are built, it is so slow. And I said this, I think, on your show a few months ago. You go out to Phoenix and you see brand new neighborhoods. You go down to Texas, you see whole new places, right?
Subdivisions
with
yeah.
thousands of units. I mean, some of those subdivisions in Texas will have 20, 25,000 units, individual houses.
Yeah.
You can't imagine
significant. Yeah.
anything like that here, right?
No.
I mean, it's a world of difference. So this is
And it's not; those are not vertical markets.
right. There's endless land, and so just remember. I mean, this Manhattan especially is co-ops, and there are
The large percentage of co-ops still exist in this
and
town.
half the transactions are
64%.
still co-op sales.
Yeah.
Right. So we're talking about a very small sliver of the market. It's like 14, 15% of the market, something like that. That's the premium, right? The higher priced, the luxury units. It's a small piece we're talking about.
And you just said that there's a 35% premium for new development over.
Well,
Right.
that's what you're
So
sharing.
Resale.
yeah. So when we
Yeah.
were, I guess during the break, we were talking about the premium for new developments over resale condos, and it's roughly 35% premium, and then resale condos have like
amazing.
another 30% premium over resale co-ops.
It's interesting. We lost a handful of deals. People were buying 4-bedroom apartments. They came to look at ours at 5.8, and they bought for 2.8.
Wow.
The co-op for 4-bedroom
Right.
off of Central Park.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the market has a lot to offer a lot of buyers. And, you do get what you pay for.
That's
But
right.
that's where you have to get really specific about what you need, why you need it.
Yes,
because
but-
those conversations,
but-
like you can help somebody through that. We can help somebody through that. But a person that just thinks, oh, I can just choose to buy the same thing for half the price.
Yes.
Well, I was
but
just
I
gonna
think
say-
Isn't
that's the
necessarily
journey.
work.
That is the
Because
journey.
co-ops are so
Right.
different from condos, and they don't work. They don't provide the liquidity that a person
Yep.
might need.
Well,
Absolutely.
playing
But if
devil's
if
advocate.
it does work, it could be amazing. It could be an amazing opportunity to buy
if they
a
don't
co-op.
need the liquidity.
That's right.
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 That's
yeah.
right.
Well, that's the thing. It comes down to so many different. But I was going to say, playing devil's advocate. If you come to me as the expert salesperson you are, and I have a choice of 5.8 or 2.8, and I say, maybe 2.8 is going to work. Maybe I
Listen,
get to keep a little more liquidity
If that
on
works
my
better
side of
for
the
you,
fence,
you
right?
should do that.
Right.
Absolutely. If it gives you the
But then
luxury,
there's the
quality,
qualification
proximity.
issue of, as you said before, in new condo sales, there is no board packages, no condo approval process. But in a co-op, you got to give your firstborn, right?
You're going into
I
partnership.
say they look up
You're
your
going into
skirt a little
partnership.
bit.
They look up
Yeah.
your skirt a lot. Not a little bit.
More than
They
a
do it a
lot.
lot.
Hold
Yeah,
on.
right. So, but that's the difference. And some people,
Let me button.
there we go. But some people will have that cash on hand or that liquidity, but they may not be able to pass a co-op board. So
Or they
there's
may not
that
want
as
to.
well.
I mean,
Or they may not
that's
want
why
to.
you have to have the real conversation.
100%.
But just to circle back, it's a stable market.
Yep.
Yeah,
The number
definitely.
of new projects, and the good projects sell quickly, right? To our earlier points here.
They do, and always have. And I attribute that to the developer who's got the right vision and the sales teams that they bring on to
And timing.
and timing, of course, but who can show and market. I mean, you're a great shower. You are a great shower. This is what it takes. Right team all around when you're working with developers or new buildings.
To add on to what Kael said, good projects. It's really a good story well told.
Correct.
As well, because you can have a good story, but if it's buried in the dirt and nobody knows about it, it's a good story.
It's
that
all
falls
about communications, right?
So
and effective
bringing
communications.
the right team together so people can understand.
Nancy
why
Reddy
it's a
nails
good
that
story.
every time. She
Yeah,
helps
yeah, yeah, yeah.
create that story.
All right, so we have a few minutes left. Let's take the conversation from the new dev side of the house to just the New York City marketplace in general. Where are we today currently? Resales and rentals. Wheezy, what are you seeing on the regular, what I call the regular market outside of new condo development? As robust? As much inventory? Lack of inventory?
Well,
Where are we?
There's a natural process that occurs. I would not consider myself a rental agent, although I manage a lot of piece of properties for clients that I've sold over the years.
Same here.
And I would say that the rental market's going to decline and continue to decline because as interest rates drop, that market seems to have a cause and effect. Same as what we saw.
people jumping into the
rental market, the one bedrooms went up 35%. I have a rental building on 34th and Park that I've taken care of for my sponsor for many years. And we were in the pandemic, we were giving away 800 square foot one bedrooms for $2,800 with 2 months free.
All over
Now
the
they're
city.
$4,300,
Yep.
and they're going to start to pull back as interest rates. So as people get off the sidelines and stop paying other people's mortgages by renting, that market will soften. But you still have areas that are naturally, Queens is seeing an 11% growth.
Queens
in
has
the
had
rental
tremendous,
market.
tremendous
And,
growth.
And
A lot more inventory.
And Brooklyn is still, it still is almost, I think, more expensive to rent than it is to own, although that shifts in certain niches of that market.
The psychology
That
of
is
Brooklyn
very
being the new Manhattan from years ago still kind of remains there.
Yeah. I live in downtown Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm surrounded by it. I watch it from the development of new buildings, condo as well as rental buildings.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of it's an iterative process, right? Because you start to have a couple of buildings, and then the stores come in, and then more buildings show up, and then now you have more coffee shops, and so more and more generates like a more highly populated area.
Yeah.
Sure, and it's sort of the vision with 50 Madison Avenue, 240 East 10th Street. Those were anchors for those neighborhoods that it was on 26th and Madison. There was nothing there. And then Mickey Naftali bought the Gift Building at 225 Fifth Avenue. And that spread like this domino effect for the next decade. And that's true for
We all like to think, though,
lot
that
of
with
them.
the latest last week interest rate cut, and as Weezy said a minute ago, the rental market should start subsiding a little bit. The high prices and the demand for rentals at very high prices. Have you seen, more renters or more buyers, I should say, who have been renting, come to the market in the quick week that it's been since the rates are down? Or are they, in your mind, considering maybe when my rent or lease is up, I'm going to do something now because hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll get another 25 basis point reduction, and then by the end of the year another 25, which would be a whole point
This
in a
weekend,
quarter.
I was covering showings at one of my buildings, and Saturday I was at the building till 8:30 at night, and almost turning away people, scheduling them for Sunday, which was a big increase over the prior weekend.
what location is that?
This is for the Eastside project, 34th
what's
Street
the
and 3rd
budget?
Avenue, and our price points are in the mid $2.5 million range for 2 bedrooms and 1 bedrooms that
What's
range
the
from
profile
like
of that
1.5.
buyer?
So
International?
I'd say,
Good
it's a
question.
very convenient area. We're at 34th and 3rd.
Yep.
So a lot of the sizes of our apartments are probably people who are going into their first purchase. It is an international location, so a lot of people are very happy with our proximity to everything. But I noticed they're not necessarily people that are going to finance, but it's this idea, we've discussed this in the past, this idea of sentiment. Even when the Fed drops the rate, a lot of people think like, oh, good, I can finally buy because mortgages are going to drop. That's not how it works.
It's not how it works.
But it's the sentiment. People feel like, oh, okay.
It's the
this
psychology
means
of it all.
It's now a good time to buy.
Absolutely.
In some cases, mortgages increase. A lot of mortgage rates are baked into.
But it's also good to point out that prior to the Fed rate cut, mortgage rates have come down or
Yes,
had
they
started
have.
to come
From
down.
October to
Started to.
October, it's
Right.
$70,000 worth of buying power.
Correct.
Period.
But if the psychology is going to work on buyers that say, hey, the Fed just cut whatever, we had a whole show on it last week, and it works for them, great, because we will get
It's
a
the
reduction
it's-
in mortgage rates
that's
at
right.
some point.
That's the idea, is that, okay, I feel like things are going in my favor.
In the right direction.
And so I don't want to be the last person standing.
And maybe when my lease comes up, either the end of this year or early into 25, I can now again consider buying because my monthlies, which everybody is concerned about, aren't going to be as high because the rates are coming down a bit. We still have common charges that are high, maintenance that are high, real estate taxes. But when you chop down that interest rate a little bit, it makes it even easier.
Yes.
Again, the majority of the last many presidential election cycles, rates have decreased approaching the election. So funny how that works.
Yeah, funny how that works.
it's
Right?
like
I know.
they-
I was going to
they
ask you all
decrease-
about
predictable.
that.
It's
Yeah.
it's a lot of, so that's just it though, is so much stuff. If you study the numbers that Kael has, you can see, oh wait, a lot of this stuff it doesn't have to just be sentiment or the whim of emotion.
Right.
Let's look at some of the patterns. Let's look at some of the
Yeah.
numbers and try to think of things critically
Yep.
and then ask yourself, what do I really need? Where do I want to be? Do I want to be an
John, I
owner
love the way
or a
you're
renter?
Thinking
It's
about
how
that.
people are feeling
It's the
based on what's
sentiment.
happening. That's
Yeah,
a
that's
really,
right. It's a
I think
very,
a really
very-
good way to think about
If
it.
we look at sentiment and
Uncertainty
measure
is
sentiment,
the biggest
oh,
obstacle in people making real estate decisions.
people are afraid of uncertainty.
There's always going to be something to be uncertain about.
Well, you know that, I know that, but the buyer out there is like, whoa, hold on a minute,
Right.
I can't put two
And
and
they're
two together
valid
here. I'm a little
concerns.
concerned.
That people have valid concerns. The good news is, though, we can show data to show what's happened. We can never promise anything. None of us have a crystal ball. Kael probably comes closest to it. But we can look at
Kael's crystal ball. I like
We
that.
can look at that data to try to help people make sense of it and then help connect people to what their real goals are.
Yes.
And that's what people have a hard time with
100%.
sometimes, because you
That's
don't
what
want
I
to
need.
feel like you're making
Yeah.
silly decisions. But we can help uncover, what do you really need?
However, I will say that part of the success that I think I've experienced in 2024 was also my mindset of, I believe that people who were buying at a higher interest rate moment when nobody else was in that market, particularly in that niche market, you're buying more today than less tomorrow. Because when the interest rates drop, those prices, there's a correlation to those prices.
Yeah, that's
there
right.
might be a moment in
Yeah.
time where the apartments that need to be renovated are taking so long that somebody will get it for another $50,000 less than what they thought because the sweat equity they have to put into it. But I really think
If you don't want to do that, you're not a part of that equation.
exactly.
Like
But I
that's-
do believe that previously to interest rates dropping, you were buying more then than
Right.
less
And
today.
in some cases, you can then refinance if
Yep.
you need the leverage.
100%.
But
And
that was
that's
the,
what people
the
need to
mindset that
remember
I
and
had
realize.
for some of my clients to not be in competition with 15 other people
Right.
when it was a quiet moment in time.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm smiling over here because we have some very talented salespeople here.
Yes, we do.
Who can really tell these stories.
Yes, they can. A lot of years of experience, and they're just
Back
great
with
people.
your numbers, baby.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right, we've got 1 month to go, a little over a month to go for the presidential election. Quickly, post-election, do we get better in real estate or not?
Better.
Better
More
business,
efficient, stronger.
more efficient, all of the above. Do we move that needle
Yeah, the
to where we want it
uncertainty
to
is
be?
always to the conversation.
To his
is always
point. Yep.
always a point.
Yeah, Wheezy?
I say fasten your seatbelts because we're going to be rocking and rolling through no matter what the results are. And that is, I'm just always bullish on New York, but particularly right now.
No, I agree with you 100%.
Well, and the numbers that I shared earlier show that in the majority of past election cycles, dating back decades, home prices and number of homes sold have typically gone up following an election cycle, regardless of who actually lands.
I agree with buckle your
seatbelts.
seatbelts.
The lower interest rates, the diminishing inventory, especially new development, that probably underpaces the number of new households created in the city. I think it's going to make it a pretty interesting cycle out of this.
January, February. Yeah, well, there you go. January, February, get on that rocket ship because you're going to go like this. We're coming right back with my thoughts of the week. Don't go anywhere.
Hey, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. Listening to Vince Rocco, you hear a lot about how crucial it is to have the right partners in this industry. At Roadway, we don't just move your clients, we give them an experience they'll love. Specialized services to our white glove treatment, it's all about making sure your clients feel taken care of every step of the way. And if you're looking for a rewarding referral program, reach out to me at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
Okay, everybody, we are back with my closing thoughts for this week. In New York City real estate, a transactional agent typically focuses on closing as many deals as possible, often treating each transaction as a one-time event. Their priority is to facilitate the process quickly, handle paperwork, and move on to the next deal. They may be less interested in the long-term success or satisfaction of their clients or the other agents, as their goal is to complete transactions quickly and increase their volume. Too bad on that. In contrast, an agent who genuinely cares about the deals invests more time in understanding their clients' needs and goals, building lasting relationships, and ensuring that clients feel confident and satisfied throughout the process. Also, their work with a co-broker becomes seamless. This agent will often provide more guidance, personalized advice, and attention to detail, striving to find the best outcome rather than simply pushing for a quick sale. They see the transaction as part of a broader, ongoing relationship, aiming to earn the client's trust and future business or referrals. This approach often leads to a more successful and fulfilling experience for clients as they feel their interests are genuinely prioritized. And we need so many more of these types of agents. I remain. And that's our broadcast for today. I want to say thanks to my guests for being here on set with me. You can follow me on Facebook, on Threads, Instagram, LinkedIn, or TikTok at Vince Rocco, or my website, thinkvince.com. And Norman Vincent Peale says, shoot for the moon, everyone. Even if you miss, you'll land among the stars. And from all of us here at Talking New York Real Estate and the More Network, thank you all for spending a part of your time with us all around the world you are. I appreciate it. I am humbled, and we will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.